Karp wrote a book, The Technological Republic. That came out just this past February. So he'd been writing it for a little bit of time. And it's about the major marriage of government and technology. And just 1 month prior to that is when Project Stargate was announced. Day 1 or 2 of Trump's second term. Which when I was like, oh, there we go. They're solidifying that marriage with Project Stargate. And I know I've talked about it a bunch, but since we're in this context now, you guys remember it was a $500 billion fund to build out AI, OpenAI, Oracle, Sam Altman, Larry Ellison. These guys are standing there with Trump on the day this is announced. And I'm sure other places are getting money from this too, like Palantir. Because they just seem to get money from everything.
OpenAI, SoftBank, Oracle, and MGX.
Right. And Ellison, we don't have to play it, but you guys remember if you saw the episode, he's the guy talking about, we will make you on your best behavior. People will be on their best behavior. He said the citizen will be on their best behavior in terms of the surveillance state and body cameras and all this stuff. And you can go look at that. Go look up that video of Larry Ellison talking about body cameras and allegedly not watching police officers in the bathroom. He's also a weirdo who sweats blood. And then Sam Altman is there, and this is just a few months after the whistleblower death from OpenAI, which he's never really talked about, but a very interesting story. This guy from OpenAI did some interviews saying that OpenAI is just using copyrighted stuff to feed into their system, which is against the law. And he'd been collecting all these documents and did a pretty big New York Times interview. And then he died. And they said it was a suicide, but his parents think it was a murder. And the crime scene photos are insane because there's blood all over the house. There's also a part of a wig and an earpiece and blood on the sink and all this stuff. They were told it was just I think two bullets to the head. Very weird story. I'm not saying Altman did it, but it's just a very bizarre set of circumstances for that because what he was saying, what the whistleblower was saying, had major ramifications for the AI world.
And that ties in with anything, though. Anytime you see a death of a whistleblower that
Yep.
coincides with said whistleblowing,
Yep.
It always raises at least one eyebrow,
And,
least on my head.
Maybe it was just a really crazy suicide. I don't know. But the photos are very, very strange. And he did that interview, and I believe it was just 30 days later when he was found dead.
But it's we saw this all through the pandemic, too.
Right. Oh, yeah. In China and here.
I mean, here.
Yep.
Ranging, obviously, the whole Epstein thing
Yep.
was one of them,
Yep.
Curious. But from a musical standpoint, on the other side, you got Chester Bennington and Chris Cornell.
Oh, yeah. I like this story.
And that whole thing really irked me because the way that they described Chester's death was that he was just so sad about Chris Cornell, and it was Chris Cornell's birthday.
Right.
And he just said to hell with it and hung himself too, but
Yep.
was also featured, a couple of days prior on a kind of a podcast, type show.
Yep.
And he seemed to be in great spirits.
Right.
Did not look like a guy who was ready to, end it all on a doorknob and leave his wife and kids behind.
And his family there's pictures of him with the family, right before too.
But when you look into what he and Chris Cornell were going to expose and were trying to actively expose.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And I just want to say, I don't like that story. I hate that story. But I love that they were actually, it seems like they were saying stuff that wasn't being said, and then something happened.
But what were they going to expose? I don't know.
Trafficking, right?
Oh.
I
Yeah,
believe it's
pertaining to
child-
children
yeah.
too.
It's the same thing with Unhinged, right? And Ellen Degenerous and all that.
That Unhinged. Do you remember the Unhinged death video?
Yeah, that was crazy.
When they're carrying her out in the gurney, and she's covered in white.
Yeah.
And then all a hand, she stands up or something, sits up.
She pops up and then they put her.
I don't think I've ever seen this.
Can you pull
Really?
it up? Can you
Oh
pull
my
it up?
God.
This
Okay,
is this is a good little tangent. We do have a caller tonight, so we're gonna get to them a little
We'll
later.
get to
I'm
you,
sorry
caller.
if you're listening. I have a few more things I got to go through, but we should watch Anne Hayes because this thing is insane. Watch they scrubbed it from the internet.
Well, TMZ maybe has it here. Let's see if this
Of course,
Yeah.
good old trusty.
it's a super
Is this
weird
it?
video.
Oh God. Well, we got to get through the Kardashian advertisement first. Right.
Of course,
Will it let me? I don't even know.
of course. Unhinged, unmissable. The Kardashians. They finally reveal that they're
right.
lizards. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this is it.
Right?
Uh-huh.
How are they gonna show it?
Person rescued.
It says person rescued after Carson. I think this is it. Is there no audio?
What?
Right, there was like a fire. Okay, car slams in the. Yeah, this is it. Yeah, go forward. Is there? There it is.
There she is.
What?
Whoa, let's pack it up.
Whoa.
Wasn't the story that they thought she was dead when this was happening?
No, she's dead. They're saying that she was
because her face
dead.
is covered.
Yeah,
Look at that,
she
dude.
just
Look at
peeled
that.
out of the body bag.
This person just peels out of the body bag. Isn't that crazy?
Isn't that crazy?
Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, super weird, dude.
I hate to laugh, but yeah. I mean,
It's like it's just so disturbing.
Okay, that is a person who looks drugged
Yeah.
or
Well, and I
inebriated in some degree, and it doesn't look like it was from the car crash. That was like, hey, get me the hell out of here.
Yep.
Wow.
It's really weird.
Well, yeah, and the conspiracy is that because Anne Heche was gonna put out some information about Ellen DeGenerous and the trafficking and stuff.
I forget the
too.
exact story.
Was there backstory to why she crashed the car into the house in the first place?
Not that I remember.
No, yeah.
No,
there-
but why
there's
would
an
there be?
I
accident.
know there's some real deep dives that I should watch at some point.
Oh my
Uh-oh.
God, sorry.
Holy moly.
That was awesome,
here.
actually. That was completely called for.
They're here. Yeah.
Bomb drop.
They're here.
Dude, that's scary
TMZ's
right
here. Oh, man. Okay, so yeah, one little offshoot of the Project Stargate thing, and just, OpenAI is getting a lot of infrastructure from that bill, from that funding. They're building all these data centers and all this stuff, to just build out the technocracy, the techno state. But I always found it funny. By always, I mean since January, that this sounds like Operation Stargate. In Operation Stargate, we talked about in the show a few times, that was psychic experiments, psychic driving, telepathy stuff. How do we do mind, magic? Which does, in my mind, connect to Project Stargate, because this technology does lead to things that will give you like false superhuman abilities, like the Neuralink. And I believe Neuralink is trying to trademark the word telepathy as we speak. Maybe it's just a coincidence. I'm just looking through my notes. I did have this one note. We don't have to pull it up, but it's one of my favorite things from David Bowie in 1999 when he's asked about the internet. He says it's an alien life form. I think about that all the time when I'm thinking about this stuff. He said, I don't think we've seen the tip of the iceberg. I think the potential of what the internet is going to do to society, both good and bad, is unimaginable. I think we're actually on the cusp of something exhilarating and terrifying. That was in 99. I always love that quote. But yeah, I think we actually are building the alien invasion as we speak. So when I say we live in a technocracy, a good example of that would be COVID, and Fauci's like a great example of one of these so-called experts. Trust the science is a great slogan for a technocracy. Someone saying I am the science is a great example of a technocrat.
So there was originally, Stargate was originally happening back in the 90s.
Was it? I thought it was earlier, but probably.
Well, it was.
I don't think it stopped.
According to the internet, it was shut down in 95.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know when it was actually started up, but the CIA report had concluded that there was no useful intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference now?
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence.
Exactly. They've built it.
So now this program is good because it can think for itself.
There is 100% a chance. I feel in my bones they named it that because it's not a rebrand, it's a continuation, right? They're just picking back up.
They didn't
figured a
cancel
way.
it. They paused it and they tossed the file and they said, let's revisit this later when we've got some actionable intelligence.
Just like MK Ultra never stopped. These things never stop. Like DARPA just recently announced pre-crime, which is a lot like what I was saying last time you guys were both here, about the homicide prediction unit in the UK.
That's nuts.
Which uses something like Palantir and probably they actually is Palantir or Foundry. They scrape all your data. They have a whole identity that they've compiled of you from your internet history, your life in the real world, and they'll say this person's most likely in the UK. They're saying this person is most likely to commit a homicide. What DARPA is saying is it plans to launch a pre-crime program to deter money laundering before it happens. But it never, like you were saying earlier with the trafficking stuff, it never stops there. This is the first steps of the social credit score when they're going to be like, yeah, well, now you can't, use your money. You're locked out, because it used to be just locked out of your Twitter account. Now you're locked out of your money. You're locked out of your card. We saw that happen in China during COVID when people weren't obeying the masks and stuff.
Someone in the chat was saying earlier about the social security cards being digital now too.
Social security cards. Oh,
Yeah.
dang. Well, the real ID is happening.
And the real IDs.
Yeah. This is all part of it. Again, for the people who are hitting me up on Twitter saying this is what they voted for, or this has always been happening, that's a cope. This is not what I voted for. I thought we were going to do a lot worse to these institutions and not bolster them to create a dystopia. I did always know these people were involved, and it seemed inevitable to me. But if you didn't like the vaccine passports, then you shouldn't like this. This is the next part of that. This is what these people do. This is what Palantir does. This is what they're all going to coalesce to do this stuff. The facial recognition, social credit score, their death drones. You will be at home, plugged into your little machine in your fantasy world, while the whole world outside is a dystopian mess. And right now, as we speak, I believe Russia is burning because Ukraine hit them with all those drones. Who's helped with all those drones? Literally Palantir. So people who are into Palantir, you are into the military industrial complex. Stop defending them to me. You are literally profiting off them murdering the world, and we are next. And that if that sounds ridiculous, that is what AI Lavender is doing right now in Gaza in terms of AI going after people. There's a 10% error rate. I bet it's more, where they have AI just going about deciding using Palantir type technologies and Clearview. I didn't even talk about that. Clearview is the facial recognition database that Teal also funded that scraped everyone's photos off the internet to put into a database. So even if you're in the background of these photos, you are now in the database. But AI Lavender is what the IDF is using, although they say they aren't, but I think that's a lie. They've murdered innocent people with this stuff. That's AI driven. And now we got Trump talking about the Golden Dome, which is what's going to become, our version of the Iron
We were
Dome.
talking about this the other day in one of our tests. The Golden Dome that Trump wants to build to protect us from ballistic, nuclear, and other incoming missiles.
Right.
But he wants to put it up in Canada.
Yeah.
Assuming that,
conquer
if
it.
Canada decides to become our treasured 51st state,
They might be.
we'll see about that. A lot
bait.
of people are for it.
And
We just had a guest that was hanging out here the other day. She was all for it.
Really?
She's like, I would love that to happen.
And it wouldn't be the first time our government just used Canada for defense purposes. During the Cold War, we built some crazy systems for radar detecting to see if Russia was going to hit us with missiles. So we just took over all this crazy land, way up north.
And we've been dabbling with French Canada,
Yeah.
as I like to call it,
Yeah.
since Ben Franklin.
Yep.
So it's nothing new.
Who was also known for freak-offs, much like Diddy. Sorry, Franklin. I know you're a smart guy.
You were a greasy old dude.
Oh man. But yeah, and then the Golden Dome, I mean, it's the way these are all connected with the Palantir stuff, and then Elon comes in there because he's got defense contracts with the government right now. A lot of their spy satellites are using Starlink. So it's all very connected. And then the other thing I'll get from people online is, this is a leftist talking point. I'm like, dude, I don't care about your partisan stuff. You sound like a hyper partisan. I care about freedom. And they are totally eroding that with this stuff. They're going to see your every step. Just like we've been saying this whole episode, everything starts out sounding nice. They always sell you on the short-term benefits. This will be used against you in horrifying ways.
The crazy thing to me is how they keep having these perfect blanket situations for testing this stuff. Like when we go back to Afghanistan and the war on terror.
Yep.
That was the NSA and the CIA dabbling in intercepting billions of communications every day from everywhere in the hopes of finding the needle in the haystack that would lead them to Osama bin Laden.
Right.
That did not stop. The machine from the Dark Knight does exist.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
Yep.
It was contracted out.
Yep.
The NSA has been using it for years. You'd like to think they're not anymore, but why would they stop?
They've been doing it since the 50s and 60s.
And the war on terror was our gateway into Afghanistan to start doing all of this stuff
Yep.
on foreign soil.
Yep.
So now we have this war going on the other side, and we have all of these projects being funded for AI. Where do you think they're breaking that ground?
Yeah.
If they can't break it here under the public eye, the next place to do it is foreign soil during a war. Testing it on actual, we're going to attack these people with this and see what the results are. Why? Because no one's going to care about, collateral damage with something like this. It's a war.
Yep. And that they're right now they've got, I forget which company it is, might be Meta. They're building world simulations for their robots to be trained in. And they'll definitely be sending them overseas to fight wars.
Oh, absolutely.
They're already policing cities here. Bad ones. I mean, the ones I've seen are pretty silly looking, like the robot in the New York City subways.
I want to see where they're hiding the droid armies. That's what I'm dying to see.
They're in Texas where Elon's pumping it out. Yeah, Elon told Rogan right before the general election in 2024 that we will be outnumbered by humanoids, I think in like 10 years. And then he just recently said he's building 1 billion and that everyone's going to want one. And then someone else said, I forget where they were from, one of these tech weirdos. They were saying that the robots that they have in their factories aren't learning properly. So the best way to learn is at your home. So they're going to send the robots, like these nanny robots that Elon keeps talking about and stuff. They're going to send them to your home so they can learn better.
So they need to be homeschooled.
So the factory is not good for them.
You. We talked about this on the last show.
Right. And so think about scientific management then, where we had to then be married to the factory, which is obviously dehumanizing. They've realized that for their robots, so they're going to send them back to us now.
Now, what are you going to sign a privacy agreement that your robot can't disclose back to the company any information about you whatsoever? How are you going to be able to
Alexa
control
with
that?
legs, dude.
And eyes.
Yeah, everything. And you're definitely people going to marry it. Which
And
I think
then
is
Alexa
where this is
becomes you and takes your name and has all of your financial information and starts making decisions for you.
Joe Biden. There you go. The amount of robots that are going to be happening, like coming into the world now, is insane. That will be the next big debate. Like we're going to start debating humanoids the way we used to debate immigration, because people, I guarantee you, will start debating if they should have equality for marriage, voting rights. I guarantee you it's going to happen. There's already men right now marrying robots, and they're not even good robots.
It's funny. You ever see Futurama?
Oh yeah, I've seen a bunch of Futurama.
President Nixon is just a head
of course.
in a jar.
Yeah.
But they kept his head alive so they could still have Nixon, and he's the president, but he's just a head, because that's all they needed from Nixon
it's like
was his
Return
brain.
to Oz, which we talked
Right.
about.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No,
that's coming.
That's
coming, guys.
Like, and look, maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe we're all just crazy, but these people want this kind of future. Like the thing that scares me about the transhumanist stuff, other than just the whole affront being an affront to God, is that they view time differently than us. They want to live longer to maintain power longer. So they get their idea of consequences are different than ours.
Did you see that thing about the U.S. government now claiming that they can control space and time?
Oh, that machine that guy was talking about? Yeah. I'm of two minds with that one, because I was like, is that guy just saying some crazy stuff because he's like exaggerating? Or do we have, because I do think our government does have things like that. Like I do think
they have to have a way of manipulating some of this stuff.
We've had Ashton Forbes on the show, and we talked about like wormholes and stuff. Yeah. I think we've been we do everything. Like if it's been thought of, if it's been written about in sci-fi, people in our government somewhere in some basement have been
And
trying.
what's that law? If it can happen, it will.
Exactly.
So
I think we're racing towards that, and I think everyone's going to have their own little wormhole at some point. Everyone's going to have their own little large.
Yeah, this is the new race to the moon. This is beat the Soviets to the moon, is what this is.
100%. And there's going to be a lot of casualties.